Okay, hi, good morning, everybody, and it's a bit of an early one, and I applaud you people in Europe who have somehow managed to be here. Can you hear me, first of all? That's the very first thing, because I'm not, when
Yes.
I start the program, you can hear me, that's good. Um, Tuya and I have this Ask project, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, and knock and it shall be opened unto you. So anyway, some of you are probably aware of that, and the purpose of it is to help strengthen the countries of the world so that they can stand for the values which seem to be threatened at this time from many quarters. Whenever there's an assault in people's minds at first, and then actually on the ground, so to speak, an assault on the four freedoms, uh, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. When these freedoms were as much of the will of Shambhala as could be expressed, and the great disciple Franklin Roosevelt did express them. And, DK obviously thought that was really an important thing, and we do too. So whenever there's an assault on those, the internal fabric of the country has to be strengthened. And that's what these Ask meditations every day at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. thus far, GMT, okay, that's what they're all about. So that's why I've had to move this discussion and meditation back a bit, actually back an hour and a half, just to be safe. And I also want to say that, and Joe and Brett would tell you this if I suddenly disappeared. we're having storms up here in Finland, and the electricity, which takes the modems out with it, is going out. So last night we were fortunate to be able to make our broadcast, but then it was out for 2 hours. And this morning I thought the wind had died down, and it had here, but somewhere down the line it hasn't. And we had a temporary blackout here as well. It takes the modem out. So it takes the broadcast out, and I just apparently disappear. So, so if that happens, Brett and Joe will be with you, and just ponder for another 5 minutes on what we've been talking about these many weeks. This is number 16 after all, and then close with the great invocation. And I'll be back as far as I know. If I can get back quickly, then we can resume unless it's too much interruption. And if I can't get back, then we will continue next week. This particular discussion here is going to be, hopefully to finish this large paper that I have prepared with some of the fundamentals about space and time and the point. And then, the really important thing is not all these concepts, which may be interesting or not interesting to you. The important thing is to be able to change your consciousness. The important thing is for the mode of perception or self-perception with which we habitually pass through what we call our experience, that mode actually changes into something far more deeply interfused. I haven't yet really gotten into the kind of words that I use to induce the kind of perception that I'm talking about. I mean, I've maybe mentioned a few of them here or there, but the fundamental ideas are easy in one sense. They are easy conceptually. The realization of them is far more difficult and sometimes fleeting and sometimes not accessible at all. And so it's to induce this realization in the process of our normal lives that this whole project is being undertaken, and my new book on the subject is coming out with all these seed thoughts, which hopefully are, in a sense, a method of induction of realization. Induction of realization. And if this can occur, then we will simultaneously learn what it means in a rather ultimate sense to be in the world and yet not of it. And that is supposed to be the attitude of the disciple. You know, everything will seem objective to us. Even the subjective states, that we normally call subjective, will seem objective. And then we will be dwelling in this state of interfusion. I guess I just call it. That's one of those words. Pondering as we go. Let's see if I can write that word down. Interfusion. When you begin to realize yourself, the real self, not the relative, developing, evolutionary self, okay, because the real self never evolves. Now, I've had some people, throw up their hand at that one. What do you mean I don't evolve? Well, if you say that, it means that we are identified as a relative self. The relative self in every universe will always evolve until it doesn't, until it reaches that point of completion of any universe, and then the relative completeness of it is achieved. But the real self will not evolve. And sometimes when you say that to people, they think you're taking away all of their possibility, like, I want to get better and better. But then who is the I that is saying, I want to get better and better? So there is a sense in which the real I in universe wants to express itself ever more completely and with fuller realization, and that's part of the overall evolution of the consciousness of the self. But the real I does actually not evolve because it has been perfect, complete, and only itself and none other forever and will be. We have to talk in terms of time because language is time and space based, unless we find another kind of language which probably can't go all the way to eliminating time and space, but can go a fair way. So our normal language is filled with time and space verbiage, but what we're trying to do is realize that we are that something. DK sometimes calls things just a something when he doesn't have words for it. We are that something that is always so, which never evolves, which has been perfect from the very beginning, and which is at one with what we call the Absolute, and is in fact the Absolute itself. Now, I don't know how much more radical one can go than to say such things, because, we're going to the root of the matter when we say such things, and that's what radical actually means, going to the root which is all generating of everything we see. So, the important thing is that as you go through your normal life, sometimes, in relative time, these perceptions of the interfusion flash on your consciousness. And that means, the old mystics used to say, break the twig and I am there. It's the here-ness of the self, or the there-ness, here and there. The self is always present. And that's maybe why, when Yogananda started his fellowship out there in California, he called it the Self-Realization Fellowship. From that particular understanding of the self, he was offering a very profound idea. He wasn't just talking about knowing yourself in a relative sense. Well, who am I as a personality? Who am I as a soul? What's the content of my causal body? How many planets have I been on? Where did I come from? All that. That's all relative language, and that we do have to learn, of course. We will become eventually omniscient in universe. Eventually. We always have become that. And that is a process which takes place in the illusory extension of moments of time. And it is a necessity required of all of us. We're just going to know everything in universe, and we're going to realize that we love everything in universe because it is ourselves, and we will be everything in universe. Those things will develop. And you know how much of what we call relative time remains in our particular universe. I don't think we're in any position to calculate, but if we get into trillions and quadrillions and sextillions and septillions and all that kind of stuff, it's just a drop in the bucket. It's nothing compared with what really remains of time in universe, even though our scientists have boiled it down to about 15 billion years, because we know the subjective universe is absolutely vaster than any type of objective universe. So when they talk about the universe disappearing, they may talk about it disappearing into what we call subjectivity, but it doesn't disappear at all. Well, anyway, we're going to develop in that way. But behind it all, we have to get the sense of the presence, the practice of the presence, this divine interfusion. And we don't want to just look at things and say, oh, God is interfusing everything. That would be true. But we also want to be able to identify in such a way that we say, I am interfusing everything. And then we just feel in our heart, and in our series of hearts that we've been talking about, we feel the interfusion. So there's no place we are not, and no thing we are not, and we simply participate as the one and only actor, regardless of the apparent divisibility into other things and other selves. Now, I know that may seem a big stretch, you know, but I think that those states of consciousness do come upon us now and then, and eventually they will be constant. We will have the continuity of the interfusion, a continuity of that type of consciousness, and that's what we are looking for. So that's my little preamble here. Now, you know, I never know what I'm going to talk about next, unfortunately, but next time we meet, I hope to be able to get into some simpler matters. That doesn't mean they're less profound. That just means they take us more magically, in a certain way, towards the realizations, the simple realizations that I am aiming at here. So, you know, in terms of the conceptualization of all this stuff, maybe we are going about as far as we can go in the world of concepts, but in the world of practicing the presence, realizing ourselves as that presence, identifying as the presence, the I am you, you are I, consciousness, I am it, it is I, we can, like forever, practice that for many lives to come, and it can only get more and more intense, and until the realization that one interfuses all, and we can't really divide the one who's doing the interfusing, but interfusion rules all. That realization will always accompany us. So that's what I'm going to try to induce that, and that's the simple part, and that's the hard part, you know. So that's the objective of what is coming up, and I think we'll be into the month of December when we do that. I have stayed, Relative I has stayed in Finland here. I thought I'd be going to the United States, but it's out with all of these ASK programs and the kind of crisis of instability that we have in our relative world, which must be solved because it's extremely serious. You know, all of the warnings that DK has given us about the religious war, or the war of religions shaping up, which involves Shambhala, which has never yet been the case, he says, even with all the sinkings of continents and the volcanoes and the transition from one race to another. He says Shambhala has never really been involved in a war. And that's what we have to avoid at all costs. So I know I'm switching themes here, but that's the thing that is keeping us focused here in Finland at this time. And I do hope that some of you are able to attend our Ask meditations. I think, we're going country by country and seeing the Christ Spirit, the presence of the Christ in every country, and warding off the forces of disintegration, which are again intent on destabilizing and ruining humanity and bringing it possibly back to the stage where it all has to be attempted again. As DK said, this is the foundation of a possibility which can be visioned. And those are scary words, even though when you think in terms of relative time and absolute time, well, nothing can ever be lost. But in terms of our experiential creation, it does lead us to the greater experience of suffering, which is not what is intended to happen. Okay, friends. Well, I could always ask you, are there any questions? But instead of doing that, which might be the nice thing to do, I will just try to finish this document. And some of it I may have already talked to you about. But just try to get your head and your heart around this language. And occasionally I'll just stop and say, ponder on this. The idea here is we have to let this stuff sink in, because it's not how we usually ponder. It's not how we usually think. It's not how we usually perceive, unless you're one of the lucky ones that perceive this way all the time. Okay, hats off to you. But this is a real departure from the usual applications of our mind. So anyway, I have X number of points here to go, and I really will try to finish them this time so we can be rid of this document, to which we can refer later. And I think Brett sends this document out with notifications of the link and all that. So it should be here, and I modify it all the time. As I study it, I keep modifying it, and so if you notice the difference between one you received earlier and this one, it's because there is a difference. Okay, so let's get into this, and hopefully we can understand something. Both of us, all of us. So, the happening of a universe, and remember there are countless universes according to the Great Breadth theory. The happening of a universe is a limited self-perception of the absolute deity. And no matter what happens as a universe or in a universe, the ultimate homogeneous substantiality, the infinitessentiality, as I call it, or infinitessence, is not disturbed. Never changes. In universe, however, it cannot really be known as it is. We have to wait for the Mahapralaya. So whatever's going on in universe, in universe is a special infinitesimal case, if I can call it that. Being in universe is a special infinitesimal case. It's not how it always is, because in the theory of time, sometimes there are no universes, and sometimes God is all in all. So whatever is apparently going on in this world of Mahamaya, the absoluteness remains forever exactly what it is. And all we really need in studying these things is a few major concepts to hang on to. The experience is the important thing, of course, but a few major concepts will keep us from getting lost, as it were, and it's so easy to get lost in these, well, I'm going to say something strange. It's so easy to get lost in these simplicities. Of course, they also seem complex because of the verbiage, but they really are simple. And we're used to a much more complicated type of perception. And then we don't feel lost, you know, when we're looking at the world as a complex thing. But when we're looking at the world as utterly simple, then it's easy to get lost. So number 53, no time has, and I want to say ever elapsed as homogeneous be-ness. We are absolutely homogeneous be-ness, and in that state, no time has ever elapsed. Now, you know, that seems like a huge contradiction because we're used to thinking in terms of time, and what we have to do somehow is get into that state of consciousness where this possibility actually dawns on us as something of a reality. We have to do that. So, you know, I'm not going to dwell on these things overly long. I'm just going to kind of mention them, and then if you want to come back and ponder them, you know, in your spare moments, all of us, I think, would be really well off if we gave 5 minutes of relative time a day to reality. Mostly we think everything is real in front of us, but it's not really real, and all of our relative time is consumed by it. But if we gave 5 minutes of relative time to reality, we might find significant changes in our consciousness. So I want to offer a bridging thought. Is it possible that absolute infinitude is so infinitely dense with possibility as to be absolute homogeneity? See, there are these poles. The absolutely homogeneous and unchanging, and the absolutely infinitely various, which is full of change forever. Like Heraclitus said, nothing is so changeless as change. In other words, the only thing that really happens is change all the time. He said it better, and I'll kind of look it up at some point, but he just says, nothing is constant but change. And that right there, he contained a great paradox. So then this is a paradoxical bridging thought. Is it possible that absolute infinitude is so infinitely dense with possibility as to be absolute homogeneity? So infinitely dense that there is no real possibility of differentiation. And notice I hit the word real here. That there is no real possibility of differentiation or real articulation. Thus, would the absolutely infinitely many, which you can only encounter in the supranoumenal realm. Now, you know what I meant by supranoumenal. The universe has disappeared, and something is apparently happening or going on, and it's not the universe. The universe has disappeared, and I call that whatever occurs or doesn't occur within that, everything capital T-H-A-T, I call that the supranoumenal realm. Okay. So thus, would the absolutely infinitely many truly be the unbounded one, the absoluteness? Absolutely infinite articulation would really be, not so much become. It just is. Would in this case would really be the ultimate homogeneity. In other words, these extreme contrasts between infinite variety, absolutely infinite variety, and absolutely infinite homogeneity would be the same thing. Well, you know, we'll have to ponder on that, but when you think of just absolutely infinite variety, it may be so, I just don't have the words for it. It just might be so, well, I just called it infinitely dense, that it becomes only one thing, or is really only one thing. So this is a theory which can be, elaborated and which must be deeply pondered, and it would cover the transition from the absolutely infinitely many, which only occurs. It never occurs in universe. It never, because the universe is a limited something. It only occurs in the supranoumenal realm. It would cover the transition from the absolutely infinitely many to the ultimate homogeneity. And articulation in that, by articulation I mean differentiation, would only begin with the onset of supranoumenal illusion, which is paraception. And we may remember what paraception is. It is the absolute deity, the infinitessentiality, the infinitessence, self-perceiving its entirety. And that's when paraception sets in, and that's the beginning of supranoumenal illusion. What I'm trying to say is that the ultimate state, words are going to fail here, so I'm struggling, but the ultimate state is absolutely only what it is forever, and there's nothing higher than that, nothing more intense than that, nothing more complete than that. And the minute self-perception begins, even in the supranoumenal state, the minute self-objectification, I see myself, the minute that begins, it's a very old idea, okay? But the minute that begins, there's an infinite reduction of the absoluteness which we essentially are, and which state will only be, I can't say known, I can't say appreciated, will only be being when the universe disappears and all has been absorbed out of self-objectification back into infinitessentiality. If you think these words are long, you should try the Finnish language. Anyway, so going on and hoping that everybody's still alive. Really, Mahamaya, considered as a category, is the willfully finalized, limited self-perception of the absolute deity. This is Mahamaya as the universe. The great deity continues to perceive itself, but less and less and less and less and less of itself until it just says, stop. That's it. This particular self-perception, I am finalizing it, and although it is like infinitely limited, it's what the next universe is going to be. Now, this is like an... I'm sorry. It's like an ant trying to theorize about the nature of the mind of the planetary logos when we talk about these things. But, I often say, hey, this is all we've got, We have a mind, we have a heart, we have consciousness. We've got to use these things and ascend by ever-lessening illusions. Anything we say is going to be illusion. All is illusion, O dweller in the shadows. It tells you in the third ray monadic stanzas of the Blessed Ones. All is illusion, O dweller in the shadows. So we're going to ascend toward the non-illusory state by ever-lessening illusions. So this is an ant trying to perceive what's going on in the planetary logos to talk about these things. The universal content of Mahamaya, that is the universe, that is the content of any of an infinitude of apparently sequential universes, is the limited self-perception of the universal logos. So this is the universal logos sees itself. It is that being which has emerged as the ray of the absolute out of the one and only. It sees itself. It's been endowed with a certain content by the self-perception of the absolute deity. Then it sees itself, and that's what we call, and our universe is filled with that kind of self-perception. every emanation of the universe, of the universal logos, and we are, each one of us is that. Each one of us is an emanation of the universal logos and the universal logos itself, which is the big mystery. So every emanation of the universal logos through self-perception, every emanation of the universal logos creates through self-perception the Mahamayavic dimension in which it appears to be localized. You know, you and I know that if we want to jump from the Earth to the Moon, we can't do it. Not by our leg power. If we want to be sitting right now somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy, we can't do it. We are localized. We are in certain limited dimensions, and that's where we are. But all of that is the result of our own self-perception. In other words, where we appear to be is how we perceive ourselves to be. And as our self-perception increases, all of our potentialities will also increase. Okay, as the scope and quality of the universal logoic self-perception increases, see, we are a particular state. Every one of us little emanations. We are a particular state of universal logoic self-perception. But as that increases, for instance, as a man becomes a solar angel, which most of us do, or a planetary logos, and a lot of solar angels together become planetary logos, as that begins to happen, the Mahamayavic dimensionality also changes. It gets bigger and bigger, deeper and deeper. We encompass more and more of these illusory dimensions, but we enjoy it. Okay, and as the scope and quality of universal logoic self-perception decreases, then Mahamayavic dimensionality gets smaller and smaller, shallower and shallower, and we are speaking here of what we might call universal, the universal great involution, which necessarily precedes a universal evolution. So every state we're in, I guess what I'm really trying to say, you know, if I can say it, that's the wrong word. Every state we are apparently in is a universal logoic, universal logoic self-perception. To be is to be perceived. This is the old philosophical dictum, and you know there are all these different schools of philosophy, and some people think that it's nonsense to say to be is to be perceived, but self-perception creates the existences with which we deal in universe. Everything around you is a universal logoic self-perception, and you are the universal logos in a very, very, very attenuated state. It almost seems infinitely attenuated, but it's not infinitely attenuated. Okay, so all the way from the great galaxies, they are universal logoic self-perceptions, all the way down to the UP, the ultimate particle event. I'm talking about it here in number 58. A true point is the smallest possible constituent in the Mahamaya. Well, why don't you say you can keep on dividing and dividing and dividing and get smaller and smaller and smaller in universe as you go towards the infinitesimal, but actually God, the universal logos, doesn't do that. At least that's how I see it. There is a limitation, and it just says, in a way, stop. That's it. We have a UP, we have an ultimate particle event for this particular universe, and it's a chosen act of self-limitation, and it gives the parameters of the cosmos in which we live. So a true point, but a true point is different than that. You know, a true point is infinitely smaller than a UP. In fact, a true point is always infinitely smaller than any definite quantity in universe. Okay, well, you see, I keep on adding things, and that's why I appear to be... this is when Tuya asked me, you know, about how to define the different points. Okay, but we won't go over that because we have been over that. And, you know, there are... well, you know, there's true points, the universal true point and the ultimate true point, and they're all really the same thing, and they are all really the ray of the Absolute which has flashed forth into finitude. So actually I'll write that down if I may. All these true points are the ray of the Absolute which has flashed forth into finitude. The universe is finite. And that is my assumption, and other people might argue with me about that, but I have my reasons for that. And in a way, everything is based on the reality of what's given in the secret doctrine. I just trust that. I trust that there is a great breath, and I trust it's been going on forever, and you can't have infinite universes when that happens. Okay, now, going on. Are you here with me? I mean, you can't help but be here with me. You know, we're all here together. We're all here one thing, but being here with me is another matter. All right. Who will we lose? Who will we gain? Who will find all of this nonsense, and who will find that it has some value? That is up to everybody. Okay, because true points are aspatial. Now, you know, in the Sanskrit language, when you use the word a, it's the privative. It takes away. So it's just like saying non-spatial. Because true points are aspatial, that is, occupy no space, they are all superimposed. Because, you know, they would have to be separate from each other and occupy space in order for them not to be superimposed. But if they all occupy the same space, because there is no space for them, they are all superimposed. This means that everything that is happening is, colloquially, as we say, is all happening right here. Everything in the universe is right here. Really not only right here, and this gets worse, okay, but identical with everything else that is happening. And this is a tough one to be pondered as we go along. Differentiation is essentially seeming. So let's just pause for a minute and just say everything that is happening right here. That means that, you know, light years and vast tracts of space, they're not real. The presence is here. It's always present. And if I'm in the Andromeda galaxy, that's not there, it's here. Now that, you know, your mind has to bend a little here to realize that. But, you know, we have that now. I mean, you know, in our internet, and I'm talking to someone in our tiny little term, 7,000 miles away, and here they are. They are present, you know. They are occupying my immediate environment, and I am occupying their immediate environment. I'm using the term here very loosely. Okay, it's all right here. So also, in universe happenings, what other happenings can we deal with right now, are only happening to or involving the one universal logos, the actor, the one actor, which is all true points in universe. So, you know, this is a great self-act. I mean, you know, who's doing what? It's all the expression of the one, the self-expression of the one for its own benefit. It's a limited one, okay, but it's for its own benefit, and all of us are part of that self-expression of the one. So if you can imaginatively shut down the illusion of space, see if you can do that, and realize that all perception of extension, the philosophers call it extension, you know, the apparent space-taking of something. If you can shut down all perception of extension, of extendedness in space, we would realize that it's misleading, you know. Extension is not really representing the truth. There is no real extension. I never can change from here, is one way of putting it, you know. The center is everywhere. I never can get out of that everywhere. I can't move from here to there. Here to there is an illusion. So, from the most remote part of our galaxy and beyond and beyond and beyond. The here-ness of there-ness. Can I put it that way? So, I know it's a bizarre idea, but contemplate the here-ness of there-ness. And, simple little thoughts like that can help with the realization. Now, I maybe you agree or maybe not, it seems to me the heart is needed to overcome space. If I want to contemplate the here-ness of there-ness, I need to have a vibration in whatever it is, that center of life we call the heart. So wherever I go, the there is here, here, here. And you just have to sit with a sentence like that, maybe for a half hour or whatever, and just let it sink in. Here is there, or there is here. There is here. Okay. The here-ness of there-ness. And those are the kinds of things, those little inductions of identification. Those little words or mantrams that induce the sense of identification in the one, that's what we're after. So, within any true point, the illusion of time, space, and thus dimension does occur. We are true points, and we have the illusion of time and space and dimension. And it is a Mahamayavic, universal logoic self-perception. Anytime the logos is perceiving itself, it's all within the Mahamaya, or the supra-Mahamaya, but it's not real. At least that, at my present state of ignorance, that's how I see it. It's not real, because true points really lack spatial and temporal dimensionality, and thus really lack all dimensionality. True points lack all dimensionality. And in fact, the Absolute lacks really all dimensionality, but somehow contains absolutely infinite dimensionality. And that's another one of those paradoxical statements. Actually, I use that word actually instead of really, we must deal cyclically forever with Mahamayavic dimensionality, and we already have. But somehow, while we're dealing with it, and here we are in universe, we have to realize that in the most profound sense, it is not real. And what is real is at the very heart of all. And we have to have some little inkling of what that heart of all really is. And then we can deal better with variety. In terms of what really happens, now, there's that word really, and it generally refers to the supranoumenal realm, or the realm of the Absolute. No apparent happening. Now, look, our world is full of happenings, right? This is happening, that is happening. Let's see, let me go back here, just to make it a little smaller. No apparent happening ever really happens at the ultimate level of reality. So this gets back to some ancient ideas that just seem nihilistic. The universe never arose. The universe never arose? Well, what's all this if the universe never arose? Well, the universe never really arose. It only seems to have arisen. And we're going to have to deal with that cyclic seeming forever. So in terms of what really happens, no apparent happening ever really happens at the ultimate level of reality. With an absolute infinitude of supranoumenal happenings, quote, happening simultaneously and in no time at all forever or always, and this is an outrageous statement from the perspective of normal perception, it is as if nothing ever really happens. Now, is that even a worthwhile thought? Nothing ever really happens? Well, ponder on that. Infinitessential beingness, which is, words I'm using for the absolute state, infinitessential beingness is really the essence of all possible happenings. And is all possible happenings in completeness. Now that's the ringer there. In completeness. In anything that could happen, the very essence of all that is infinitessential beingness. which is not limited by any Mahamayavic happening. Not limited by any of them specifically, but it's not just that it's the source of all happenings. I'm saying something more. It actually really is all happenings. So, I will use the great escape phrase, ponder on this. DK is always saying it for different reasons. He really knows that we can get benefit from it. I'm just saying it to get out of that paragraph, because you can come back to this paragraph and just see, look, nothing's really happening, and everything Mahamayavically happens forever. We get into paradoxes here, but I just want us to get a sense in our heart of the infinite homogeneity, which is the very essence of anything that could ever possibly exist. It's not just the source of these things, it is them, and in total completeness. Now that's about as outrageous as I can get, so I too will return to this outrageous statement with high hopes. Okay. In this view of the true point, there is no measurable space. Now, so points are non-dimensionals. I'm calling them non-dimensionals. When non-dimensionals are added to non-dimensionals, they yield a non-dimensional. You just can't add true points and get anything other than a true point. Spacelessness added to spacelessness sums to spacelessness. A cipher, added to a cipher yields a cipher. Timelessness added to timelessness yields timelessness. In mathematics, this is considered to be what you call a trivial statement. They have a special meaning for trivial, but 0 plus 0 equals 0. And for our metaphysics, this is really important, because what we're talking about here is the vacuity of apparency. Okay, forgive me for these things. We are speaking of the vacuity of apparency. I think you know what I mean by that. Everything that you think you see is really ultimately a cipher. It just doesn't have the normal dimensionality which defines things for us. Thus, theoretically, not only can you, what you think you are, an emanation in universe, because of the superimposition of all points, not only can you in universe access any happening, but since there is only one ultimate true point, you are. Through the process of universal logoic emanation, you are that happening itself. You say, well, back at the Lucis Trust when I used to work there, the guy used to come in, in the morning, and I was there early in the morning, and he'd open the door and he'd say, well, it's all happening. And then we would debate that point. He said, all happening? Numinally or supranuminally? It's all happening. Okay, so we are every happening. That's what I'm trying to say. When something's happening, you're it. So I'm going to put that down. When something is apparently happening, you are that happening. You are that happening. Now, this seems a little crazy, but that's the way I see it at the moment. That happening. Okay. You are that happening. So when something is apparently happening, you are that happening. Okay. I think I must have erased something. So anyway, whatever's happening in the universe is ultimately a universal logoic self-perception, and you are the universal logoic self, which is self-perceiving. Now, it seems a long way from being a tiny human being on a tiny non-sacred planet and how we define ourselves, but Vedanta allows you to define yourself in absolute terms. And maybe other, great wisdom traditions in their own way allow you to do that. Now, let's see. Where am I here? I told you I could get lost, and I think I have. So not only can you in universe access any happening, but since there's only one ultimate true point, you are, because of the universal logoic emanation, that happening itself. When something is happening, you are that happening. You are the universal logoic emanation, that happening itself, and I'll make a comma here, happening in universe. No, what I'll do is I'll do it that way. Happening in universe is ultimately a universal logoic self-perception. Now, have I lost anybody? No, we've gained one and lost none. That's very good. I have to applaud you for your tenacity, hanging in there, as it were. So you are the universal logoic self, which is self-perceiving. Now, how do we know that? Well, it's speculation at the moment and occasional flash of realization. Of course, all these realizations will become full realizations only once through the process of emanative retraction, going back and back and back along the emanative line, just as once you went forward, forward, forward into differentiation, back and back into non-differentiation, when we fully re-become the consciousness of the universal logos, which we already are right now. Okay, so I'm going to begin to speak in paradoxical terms, and you'll understand why. The true point is distinct from zero, because the true point is a something, whereas zero is a nothing. And this little zero has no generative potential at all, whereas sometimes metaphysicians talk about absolute zero, has absolutely infinite generative potential. So you know what I mean by absolute zero. I don't mean a condition of minus 200 and something degrees Celsius, whatever it is. I mean the absolute no thing. That's what I mean by absolute zero. It has absolutely infinite generative potential, whereas the tiny little zero, which is the nothing, has no generative potential at all. So the thing to do, for us to do, is to reduce everything you see, everything you register, everything you are impressed by in universe to a true point. And I've asked you to practice that, and I go practicing it too as I go through my daily round. Occasionally I practice that. I look at a flower, I look at a tree, I look at a stone, I look at a car, I look at a person, and in my mind I reduce them to a true point. So this will be ultimately reduced to the universal point. You're seeing nothing here in front of you, seeing, registering, feeling, sensing, relating to nothing but the universal logos. It's all the universal logos. So this will take deep and prolonged meditation, and it may take many human life cycles. And the important thing is, we've all done it over and over and over and over again, more times than you can ever specify. We've done this in the Mahamaya of the Great Breath. We have done this over and over again. We have become the part, we have re-become the whole. We've become the part, we've re-become the whole. And every time it's different, because the universe is a different game, a different play, a different drama, a different piece of music. It's all different every time. Well, does the Absolute ever run out of the possibility for creating different universes? No. Never. There's always more. There's always more possibility of creation. Well, let's just say that there's always more possibility of creation within the absoluteness than can ever really be created. So it just goes on forever. So this means that everything in universe that you see, register, or impressed by is actually or really the universal logos, which is you. So let's just ponder on that for a brief moment. Everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful. It's all you as the logos. I. We never should use a word like you, really, but we just use it to be clear. Okay. So, if all true points are really superimposed, because they can have no extension, even though they mahamayavically extend in consciousness, in other words, we think they're extended, they seem to be extended, what does this mean for time? That's the harder one. For me, that's always the harder one. I think I can get rid of space before I can get rid of time. I mean, I'm working on getting rid of time, too. Getting rid of space almost seems accomplished. Getting rid of time is harder because I'm one of the most time-bound persons I know. So, okay. Let's just say there's no real extension of moments, no matter what the seeming may be. Now, this is really hard. That all moments are one and the same as and in the universal eternal now. All moments are one and the same in the universal eternal now. And this thought takes us right into the content of the absolute infinitude, which is absolutely infinite and simultaneous forever, never requiring time to be. Now, this is one of those ponder on this statements, I think. So the content of the absolute infinitude is all occurring simultaneously in no time at all. It doesn't require time to be. Now, when we think about life, everything requires time to be. If it's a thing, it requires time to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be perceivable. Well, that's the whole problem, Reality, to the likes of us, is not perceivable. It's beable, but not perceivable. Maybe I should put that in, just as a little fun. Reality is beable, but not really perceivable. And that is, that's one of those little mantrams that can jog our consciousness to further realizations. The ultimate homogeneous beingness of all contains the fullness of all breakouts into sequence. Now, everything we see takes time. Oh, that'll take time, it'll take an hour, it'll take 2 hours. Everything breaks out into a sequence of apparent moments. But the ultimate homogeneous beingness of all contains, it is those breakouts, and that's the hard one. A breakout is a breakout, but what if something that takes no time at all actually is, in fullness, the sequence itself? So just as the whole idea can be grasped suddenly and simultaneously, you get an intuition, then it takes you 5 years to break it out into time, space, practicality. So you get the whole idea all at once, in no time at all, virtually. So just as the whole idea can be grasped suddenly and simultaneously with no immediate need to break it apart, so the ultimate homogeneous beingness is really all possible breakouts into sequence. And a universe is a breakout into sequence. To be what it is, no breakouts into sequence are really needed. But for Mahamayavic expression, such breakouts into sequence are needed. So this is a problem. I wrote a paper once, and I'm always going deeper into it, and it should be on Makara somewhere. A paper, and I talked about it too. I had a webinar on that where I talked to myself as always. The problem of simultaneity and sequence. So this problem of simultaneity and temporal sequence is a tremendous problem for people such as we are. How can something which seems to have extension in time be actually simultaneous? I think I just said it. How can something that seems to be extended in time actually be occurring in no time at all? Okay, so I'm going to put that down. Can apparent sequence, and then I'll use occur. I always use those little single quotes when the word is not being used ordinarily. Occur in no time at all. How can that be? And that's something we're going to have to just ponder. Can it be that breaking out or temporal extension into a parent chain of events is just a seeming, a Mahamayavic representation of that beingness, which contains all possible such events in homogeneous solution, that is, in an eternally timeless state. Now that's another one of those ponder on this sentences, okay? Everything I give you to ponder on, I am pondering on, when I have the time to ponder timelessness. Everybody has to have the time to ponder timelessness, otherwise the realization of timelessness will not supervene. So can it be that all of this breaking out into temporal extension, into an apparent chain of events, is simply a seeming? All of this is a Mahamayavic representation of the beingness, which contains all possibility in absolutely homogeneous solution in an eternally timeless state. Well, Galileo, for lesser reasons than this, said, we cannot understand God. And he really meant it. And that was just a great, brilliant scientific, philosophical, and musical mind. We cannot understand God. Okay, I have to go with that. But still, speculation in the direction of the understanding of God, I think, is allowed. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. Now, as I've said to myself and said to others, one has to know how far one can go with the mind, and even how far it is permitted to go before some kind of madness supervenes. Maybe I should give you one of my, mad faces. I hope that I haven't crossed over the border here. But when you're thinking about these things, it leads you into a realm which is unusual, to say the least, and which seems nihilistic in some ways, but it is absolutely positivistic in another way, because it accounts for the appearance of everything, even though you call those everythings unrealities. So I hypothesize, and here I'm using my little 8 to indicate I hypothesize that the infinitessence contains, in essence, all possible sequence of events. And then we'd ask ourselves, how can that, which is eternally non-sequential, because absolute homogeneity is, in my view, how can that which is eternally non-sequential contain, or in fact be, an absolute infinitude of chains of sequential events? And yet this is exactly what I'm proposing, that the infinitessence is all possible chains of sequential events, and we'll have to ponder a long time in Mahamayavic time in order to somehow grasp that, or even get an intimation of its possibility. So now I'll tell you what, normally at this point I would stop, but we are so close to the end of the end. We're so close to the end of this document, from which I seek to give you some relief, that I would like to plow ahead, if it's permissible, and then just give the simplest meditation, the very simple meditation. I will forego the meditation that I was planning and just get into the experience of it. So if you just hang with me here a little bit, I'll just try to finish this off in short order before it finishes me off. Okay, now, if all true points were really superimposed, because they have no temporal duration, we could not measure time between the occurrence of the appearance or appearance of true points, because there would not be any other true points to appear, because they're all superimposed. Thus, any possibility of anything being between anything else doesn't exist. There's no betweenness whatsoever. In reality, there's only one superimposition which amounts to the same thing. So here's another one of my little prods into altered thought. Multiplicity is apparency. Now that's obvious, right? Multiplicity is apparency. Multiplicity is Mahamaya. Since universes are universal true points, it would necessitate, now this is where it gets really crazy, it would necessitate the superimposition of all universes and no temporal distance between universes. Now think about that, because we usually said, well, this universe took so long and then it disappeared, and the period of no time, no space took so long, a contradiction, But I'm saying that maybe, since all universes are true points and we superimpose all true points, that there's no temporal distance between universes, whatever the seeming of Mahamaya might present to our limited emanating consciousness. Thus, and this is, I should have a list of, in my new book called Outrageous Statements. Maybe just a short list, the short list and the long list of outrageous statements. Thus, the existence of the great breath, from the secret doctrine, for all its fundamental grandeur, and I love the great breath, it seems to be the archetype of all time, is a limited perception outside the realm of the absolutely suprannumental infinite essentiality, or the realm of the absolute. In other words, even the great breath itself is a limited perception. Whoa, ponder on this. The great breath, it's the great fundamental. It's the law of periodicity. It's the second fundamental of the secret doctrine. Is it also a limited perception, actually outside the realm of suprannumental infinite essentiality? I think so. But we have to go with it because it is the most real archetypal movement that exists in relation to that which becomes a universe. But, I'm pondering on this. What actually happens after a while, friends, is that everything just reduces to one true point only. And then that true point itself disappears into pointlessness. Reality is pointless. Well, okay. Reality is pointless. and the ultimate true point, which is all universes, even those to come, superimposed, disappears into pointlessness. Now, what will that do to your consciousness if you ponder that? See, this is an experiment in consciousness from the practical point of view. That's what we're doing. So, anyway, it would mean, this thing we're thinking about, the superimposition of all universes, it would mean that no interval between universes has real duration. And that when you add an infinitude of universes and an infinitude of apparent Mahamayabic intervals between universes, at an infinitude of times, when the absolute deity is all in all, during the Mahapralaya, we intuit, we understand the absolute deity is all in all. So when you add those apparent intervals and you add the interval of a universe, no time at all has passed. No time has passed. Now, that collapses everything we normally think of as reality. And from the perspective of the absolute, which may not be really a permissible phrase, no time will ever pass. It's really a timeless setup we're in. So a lot of contemplation is needed here. That which passes, in this case, let's call them moments, must be finite and distinct from other finitudes, if such moments are to be added. You can only add finitudes to finitudes, But if you can't add ciphers, you can't add zeros. But there is no other distinct time or moment to pass from. And there are no discrete, differentiable moments, only seemingly so. So now what I've tried to do right now, okay, and I maybe haven't done too good a job at it, just the way we were able to collapse space into a non-dimensional state which is all here. So what I've attempted to do here is to collapse time into a non-dimensional state which is all now. Now, obviously this is going so far beyond the realm of words, and I'm using a plethora of words to talk about it, that words itself only lead up to the door. Words themselves. The so-called promised land, where Moses the mind can never go, can only be apprehended in different ways. You know, you can lead a horse to water, and but we have to drink in the reality ourselves. We're not depending on the mind to actually navigate us through the reality. The mind is only good to bring us to the point where we might be open via the various heart centers to an impression of what reality is, and then we'd probably never really be able to express it per se, and the old idea of silence would emerge. So let me just try to finish this off. I just have a little bit more to go here. A point in time requires real dimensionality, measurability, if it is to pass from itself to another point in time. But by definition, a true point, in a true point, there's no real dimensionality. And whether that's a spatial point or a temporal point. So we cannot pass. That's what I'm trying to say. We cannot pass from one moment to another and from one space to another. Only apparently so. But really not. We cannot pass. I always remember Gandalf. It was one of those Lord of the Rings things, and he encountered this ancient fiery demon, or whatever it is, and he said, "You shall not pass." And he banged his spear or his staff on the ground, and he blocked the whatever it was called, some Balgog or some Gog or other. He blocked the passage of the demon. Sometimes the demon for us is the lower mind, dividing everything into little pieces and making things that are real unreal in our consciousness. But we cannot pass. This is the thing I'm really pondering on. We cannot pass really from one space to another because it's all here. And we cannot pass from one time to another because it's all now. So, ponder on that for the rest of our lives here. We cannot pass, I just have to write this down, from one space to another because all spaces are exactly here. And we cannot pass from one time to another because all moments are exactly now. So that's one of those ponder on this statements. Now, I have to pause for a second to say I realize that in studying decay, we're not studying this. We're studying something far more necessary than this. We're studying that which will help us navigate wisely this world of illusion and re-become the universal logos. So, we have to study Master Decay profoundly. What I'm offering here is a contrasting point of view to all that we must study, and it's a point of view involving the curriculum of being, if I can call it that. So, going on, because I want to finish this, if you don't mind. Maybe you do mind, but I still want to finish it, okay? Points in time and points in space result from limited perception, which is ultimately limited self-perception. So only the absolute deity can see all by seeing itself fully. So when we see a moment, here's a time, here's a space, that's all limited self-perception. And I have a question here, and we'll look at it, but then we'll throw it aside and deal with it another time. The question remains, when the absolute deity perceives the ultimate form of perception, its absolutely infinite entirety, is that perception an ultimate suprannumental, absolutely infinite point? Oh, I need really to be forgiven for that question. The prototype of all possible points. But can a point be absolutely infinite? Okay, forget it. We'll come back to it. We will return. How far does pointillism go? Because the absolute infinite essentiality is pointless. But on the way back to that, does it take time? Anyway, I have another one of those little things that I say, Perception is pointillization. Okay, that's meant to be a little prodding mantram. Get the point? Okay, terrible. Perception is pointillization, which means ultimately that self-perception is pointillization, at least in universe. Every self-perception in universe is a true point. Perception is pointillization, PIP, PIP, my ray test. Okay, so in universe, all perceptions are universal logoic self-perceptions, and all universal logoic self-perceptions are points, that is, true points. And when we say, but it is I who am self-perceiving, this is only partially correct, because the I is really the 8, which is really the universal logos. So when we look at ourselves and perceive ourselves, who's perceiving? Who? What? Ultimately, the universal logos. All self-perception of any being in cosmos is really the self-perception of the universal logos. So, man, know thyself. Well, know thyself. Which self? Ultimately, the universal logoic self. I'm so near the end that I'm almost finished. As stated above, we can question whether every self-perception of the absolute deity is a something, which we can call the supernoumenal true point, but I can't get into that right now because it involves the problem of points, which are infinite. In other words, are there infinite points? And that almost seems a contradiction, so I can't get into that now. There is nothing you can objectify, see, register, be impressed by, which is not a true point. And thus, which is not a universal point, another name for the universal logos, and ultimately the ultimate point. So everything that you see, register, or impressed by is a true point, is the universal true point, and is ultimately
That is ultimately what, Michael?
We've lost contact.
Guess so. Well, there's certainly enough to ponder.
Yes, let's start timing our 5 minutes of pondering that point.
connection has been re-established.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, I'm re-established. Oh, I thought I had almost disappeared, but the one thing that is impossible is that you will ever disappear. Now, this should be a little bit comforting to those who fear death or fear walking into the other room or a change of scene. You can never, ever disappear because you're that which is present forever. Not going to disappear, even though electricity can make relative I disappear from this program. So anyway, I'm almost there. This, very strange to our present consciousness, this boil down, the boil down of all this is that there are no real moments. I didn't say there are no actual moments. Okay, let's just say there are, I'll put it this way, there are actual moments, and they are mahamayavic, and they are receiving. But there are no real moments. There is only the one and only. There's only there's only the one non-temporally extensible moment in universe, the eternal now. which has no perceptual extension, and which ultimately is the one and only eternal now, supranuminally, all capitalizations, a now which never changes and in which there is no time, as there is no real movement. There is no real movement, so there's no time. Supranuminal movement, which is a category of supranuminal illusion, begins with the arising of perception. Now, we're so close to the end, so I won't really, and I realize I'm being threatened here by our electrical system in stormy days. So ultimately, we've just wiped out time. And even the concept of eternal duration has to be relative to something else, and there is nothing else. So you can't even say there's eternal duration, although our minds demand that we say something like that. So in summary, all points in space are superimposed, and all points in time are superimposed, and thus whatever else Mahamaya may indicate, and Mahamaya does indicate something else, there is no real space and there is no real time. In our in-universe consciousness, these realizations result in, and this gets practical, when we actually see that somehow we are this whole thing and we've not only created it but become it, it generates identification and a real deep love for all universal contents of consciousness, which is everything you can perceive. So omniscience in universe and omnipotence in universe, they will also arise, and by the time we re-become the universal logos which we have never ceased becoming, we will be filled with universal knowledge, universal love, universal power. We will have all that even as we have all that now. So this is my last point, number 88, kind of fitting, an 8 and an 8. Coming down to the practical level, the realization and expression of power as spiritual will and purpose, love and light, are the results of these greater realizations. Now, I will send this to you, or this is, latest version, as it were. Brett will send it to you, and you can ponder on different parts of it. There's a lot to ponder here, a lot to ponder. And I'm going to get simpler from now on, okay? Is that a promise? I think it's a promise. It feels like a promise. I'm going to really get simple about this. We have only a couple of moments, a few moments for questions or statements, and then I want to give you the simplest meditation. I haven't the slightest idea what it's going to be, but it's going to be really simple, okay? And it's not going to be all of this stuff. It's going to be more experiential. So is there anybody who would like to say anything, ask anything? We can go on for a short time doing that. And then I want to, because we have our Ask webinar coming up, and Brett and or Joe, could you possibly put the link to the Ask webinar in our chat box here so everybody could see that? I can't race off and find that right now, but you could join us, and let's see, I see the Tuya's here also, and what countries, Tuya, are we, if you can hear me, what countries are we dealing with today, Tuya? Can you tell me that?
Yes, we have China and Brazil.
Oh, okay. Two really important countries for the future. Okay, and by the way, I want to give you the thumb drive for that, too. I have it down.
Yes, I have been trying to find it. Thank you.
Yes, I've got it right here. Okay, sorry. Okay, anyway, China in the morning, a great first-ray soul, third-ray personality, Taurus, illumination, the soul sign, and Libra, diplomacy, the personality sign. Maybe you can join us. We attempt to empower that country, which is also, interestingly, threatened in various ways. Okay, are there any statements you would like to make before we get into our little meditation? I promise it will, because, I know that I have stretched your patience here in going on for almost an hour and a half trying to finish this particular document. But I have, I only want to deal with so much complexity, not too much complexity, because the whole thing is so extremely simple that I want to get back into the simplicity and those little mantrams which will help to induce the realization of simplicity. So I'm looking for you, if there's anything you would like to say or ask. Okay. Because I really don't blame you. In the last analysis, there's nothing to be said. I heard once, and I don't know, that you were allowed to talk about like almost anything in some of the ancient cultures, but if you tried to talk about the absolute, it was punishable by death. Whoa, that's pretty heavy, if true, and I'm dead many times over as a result of that. So I know there's really not too much to say about the absolute. Yes, okay, maybe Bibi has something here. Time and space could be related to the consciousness living in every ring past knot and expanding. The farception changes until all becomes here and now. Yes, that's a good statement, Bibi. I'll reread it. Time and space could be related to the consciousness living in every ring past knot. Exactly. The Mahamayavik consciousness in every true point includes apparent time and space, and expanding. The farception changes constantly until all becomes here and now. And with every successive change in perception, as I say, our Mahamayavik self-perception will constantly expand, will constantly deepen, as far out as you go, as far in as you go, as far up as you go, and all of those terms are just, relative terms. It all becomes here and now. So if I'm this big, I collapse it to the true point. If I'm bigger, to the true point. If I go beyond the planet, to the true point. Beyond the solar system, beyond, all the true point. Collapsed to the here and now, which is the consciousness of the universal logos. So thank you for that statement. Okay, and Rebecca has something. Brett, will you read that to me? Because if I try to get in there, I'm going to miss it.
Yes. Rebecca says, this series is revealing a greater depth of meaning for me when intoning the great invocation, i.e., from the point of light, etc. Very mind-expanding. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about that, but it's so true that, there's only one point in all universe, and it is the point of light, love, and power. We have successive points. Sirius is such a point. The one about whom not may be said is such a point. And relatively, these things are the places where we derive our energy from. But if you really get ultimately to it, everything that we see in front of us is the extension of the one and only universal point. And I hadn't really done the great invocation with that kind of thought, but I can try it. Mostly I stay closer to home, and even think about our own microcosmic correspondences as the soul, as the monad, and so forth. But thank you for that very expansive thought. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Well, I seem... the thing is, I want to get out of the way of our ask meditation. And has anybody put that in there, either Brett or Joe? Have you found the... there it is. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. If I put it down here right in front of us, you can always access it, and Brett has put it there for the ask broadcasts. Right there. So just copy that, just cut and paste that if you can or whatever. You can do that out of the box. And if you can join us in another half hour, wait a second, no, it's another hour from now. Yeah. Okay, well, look, I promised that I would make a meditation. I'm just going to do something spontaneous, if you don't mind, and not really get into all the complexity of the other meditations. So I might remind myself by putting meditation 16 in front of me, but I'm not really going to do all that. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure we are in a good, comfortable and poised position to meditate. And we withdraw, as it were, from our usual identifications. With Raja Yoga, we know the body is just an instrument. Our vitality comes and goes. Our desires come and go. There's nothing permanent about them. Our thoughts change constantly. The real self is unchanging and permanent. Even if we were to slip into the egoic lotus, our truer home on the higher mental plane, all of that would be very expansive compared to our normal consciousness, but still not the reality. It comes and goes. And even if we were to slip into the more planetary consciousness of the spiritual triad and see the changes in the mind of God as reflected on the cosmic physical plane, even if we were to experience the great harmony and love and the presentation of intuitions and ideas on the Buddhic plane, or the will aspect as it tries to direct us towards the fulfillment of the plan, these things too come and go. We will expand into them. We will rise, and we will embrace the planet, and eventually the solar system. We'll know we are everywhere on the planet. We will know we are everywhere in the solar system. A certain non-locality will be ours. We won't be human beings then, of course. But we'll have merged our identity into some greater and more encompassing identity. And maybe as we begin to slip into the monad, the one, the essence of our identity as expressed on the cosmic physical plane, maybe we'll get some sense of our participation in everything. think about being everywhere. It's not so far-fetched. DK says the harmless person realizes himself to be everywhere. Think about that. Just visualize different places on the planet, off the planet. I am there, and there is here. Anywhere whatsoever on the planet, anywhere, whoever is doing something, whatever is doing something, whatever movement there is, I am there, and there is here. You can practice that for 5 or 10 minutes a day. It's the practice of the interfusion. You, the interfusing substance, are there, which is here. And what you will discover is there's just no intervals. There's no between. Nothing between here and there. It's all here. And I am in the there, which is here. Even off the planet. Go to any planet in your imagination. I am there. And the there is here. Or to the sun. Or to some of our distant stars. I mean, even the closest is 4 light years away. A tremendous relative distance. I am there. And there is here. Relative I is not there, but real I is there. Relative I is still confined by time and space, but real I is not. And now, that's too short a time to ponder, but you'll know how to do it because it's so simple. You can just work on that. I am there and there is here. You can work on that. But now, let's let our imagination go backwards or forwards, but backwards first. You ago, universes ago. Well, let's not even do that. Let's go back 1,000 years. I am there then. I am there then. And of course you were. Maybe it's the crowning of some king like Charlemagne. I am there. Maybe it's the building of Stonehenge. I am there then. Maybe it's the sinking of Atlantis. I am there then. Maybe it's the moment of individualization on the Earth globe. I am there then. Just choose any one of those. And then is now. I am there then, and then is now. A 1,000 years from now, I will be there then. I am there then, and then is now. Open the hearts. Then is now. Then is now. And you can do this imaginatively, go back a universe or two, go ahead a universe or two. I am there then. I was there, but more than that, I am there, and then is now. And that will take deep pondering. Deep pondering. Collapse time, collapse space. There is here, and then is now. And that's really all you have to work on, really. There is here, then is now. And when you're doing that, make sure you identify as the underlying substance. The interfusion, identify as the interfusion, and then it may be possible to apprehend this. Okay, as the interfusion. So do that first, and then practice. There is here, and then is now. Okay, friends, we're going to close with the great invocation. And some of you may wish to join us at our Ask webinar. We'll deal with China, one of the most advanced schools to come in the future will be in Western China. Sounds a lot like Tibet to me. So the DK called it Western China, a very important nation as part of the balance in the coming centuries. So the great invocation, all of us together at a point, as it were, our one beingness, our one consciousness, impressing us from the point of light within the mind of God. Let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, thank you so much for coming, and do practice these little mantrams that may give a certain induction, and we'll just unmute you. I'll start at the top, Brett, so you can say farewell before you disappear, which is the hardest thing to do, although I think I proved it can be done with the electricity, but it's very hard to do to really disappear. Thank you, and
Thank you.
see you next week, as far as I know, and let you know otherwise. Many blessings, and
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much.
Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you from Marybelle.
Thank you, Marybelle. Sometimes I recognize your voice. I think I would have recognized yours. Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
Love you,
it's nice.
Michael.
Yes, love you all. Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
All the best, and we'll
See you at
talk
the
to
Ask Meditation.
we let's
See
stay
you
in
soon.
meditation. We have lots to do. Let's live our whole life in meditation and still be practical. I'm working on that one. Okay, see you later.
See you at
Good
Ask.
night, Michael.
In relative
Bye,
time. In
Michael.
relative time. Bye.
Love
Bye-bye.
you, Michael. Love you, Michael.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye. Love to all.